Welcome to our channel. We're the Simple Teachers.
Today we have a video for you all about comprehension instruction. I know for many teachers, myself included, my first couple years and still sometimes, comprehension instruction can seem daunting. It might be one of your hardest components of reading to teach. But in today's video, we're going to go over the what and why of comprehension instruction, and it'll hopefully alleviate some of that pressure or stress or ill feelings toward comprehension instruction.
Let's hope. Comprehension really is the whole reason we do everything else. It is meaning making from text. So as we're reading, during reading, we're making meaning in our heads. And we want to do this so we can discuss and have discussion or write what we've learned and then grow our learning. So we have to have a way in our classroom to do discussion and written responses. I know in the lower grades that's limited by their writing ability, and that's fine. Do what your kids can, obviously, and don't kill your pacing with that. Discussion is still the number one way to measure comprehension. Researchers have not found a stronger measurement. So you have to have discussion in your comprehension lessons. So you want to make sure that you include that.
And we have a free little tracking sheet for discussion during your comprehension lessons to just help you track, oh, hey, they're summarizing really well as they're talking, or they made really a prediction, and you can just track their discussions.
Yeah. And then you have some data that you can show that they're making using those strategies.
So we begin by teaching the strategies. It's the foundation to reading comprehension instruction. So go watch all those strategy videos. That will help you get a head start on that. So by teaching those foundational strategies, you can start with one, and you model heavy when you're first starting. You model. You do gradual release throughout the strategy, throughout the lesson, throughout your year. Gradual release looks different. And so you teach one strategy, and then maybe by second grade they can do two strategies, and you can even get to 3, and reciprocal teaching has 4. We have resources for reciprocal teaching as well, using 4 strategies that are proven to be highly effective. And so that's kind of how we start with strategy, but it's not the end, it's the beginning. So it's the foundation. So it doesn't stop with strategy instruction. Those strategies provide the tool for readers as they're reading to understand what they read. It's the tool we have to comprehend.
Yeah, so once our students have those tools in here, they can then become metacognitive and flexibly use those tools. So maybe in an upper grade, or we were talking, Whitney has been able to get a little bit of this in her second grade classroom already. You're able to read a text with your students, and they flexibly can use whichever strategy is the most useful at that time to comprehend the text. And that's the kicker. That's the thing. But they won't be able to do that if they don't first explicitly know how to use the strategies. So we have to build that foundation very clearly, very purposefully, so then they can be metacognitive with their strategy use.
You'll want to read the article we have linked, Jottings.
Yes.
It's probably one of my favorite articles out there. Yeah. So I've been using it in my classroom. This is my third year, 2.5, I want to say.
Yeah, probably.
And so I'll post a little picture of the poster we're at right now. It's almost November. It's almost November, and so we have just been adding the strategy we've learned to our Jottings poster, and so it's a living resource. We add the strategies we've learned, and then we know we've learned them. Those are strategies that I know they can pull from as tools to make their own choices, being metacognitive when appropriate. And so sometimes your students' comments might, during a strategy-focused lesson, For example, we were doing comment this week, and some of my students really had some questions. I'm not going to stifle their thinking or their learning. Instead, hey, let's jot that down on the side. We're not focused on questions right now with our strategy, but questions are a great thing. You're understanding the story by asking a question. I'm not going to stifle that, but I want to make clear that right now we're evaluating and making comments, but let's just jot your question out to the side. It's so natural.
Yeah.
They pick up on it, and it teaches them to think about their thinking, what they're doing inside their brain as they read. I have just fallen in love with it.
Yeah. And that's really what it's all about. Those strategies are not the end. They use them to comprehend. So we have to teach those. And then we need to take what they've learned back to discussion.
Yes.
So we read, we use the strategies during reading. We stop, we think, we talk, we write, we read, we stop, we think, we talk, we write, repeat until we get to the end. And then,
talk, right.
We get to the end, we discuss together. And then our understanding of the text and your understanding of the text adds to each other's understanding of the text, and it deepens our understanding. And that's where we're creating that socially constructivist, additive quality to what we know.
Yeah. So in upper grades, unless your students haven't been taught the strategies, you will be teaching multiple strategies, or hey, let them choose the strategy, right? Let them be metacognitive. But if they haven't had strategy instruction, which you'll need to do an assessment to find out, you need to know your students. You'll need to teach those right away. And when we were talking, Angie's like, in the upper grades, they'll pick up on them quickly. So make sure you teach those. And then you can use something like Jottings as your comprehension tool to be able to understand the text. And discussion is where you're going to really see them comprehend the story. So you'll need good strategies, good procedures for talking, for buddying up, small group, all types of ways to discuss.
Yes. And then your measure of their comprehension is, you can use a tracker like we will have linked in the description. You can make notes of what strategies they are using, what types of thoughts they're having, deep thinking. Are they generating questions? Are they generating new ideas and new thoughts based on other people's thoughts? You know, you can really get some good data from listening to those discussions.
Will you clarify the question, strategy versus skill? What's what?
Yeah, strategies are things that happen during reading, and skills, and your core reading programs usually get these mixed up. Skills are usually things that they can happen outside of the reading process. So after, before, or they're disconnected from actual text reading. The strategies happen during reading. So like a decoding strategy, I am doing that while I'm reading text. Comprehension strategy, I'm summarizing as I'm reading along because I can't hold on to all that information, so I summarize it in my mind as I'm going. I'm asking questions as I'm going along. I'm predicting as I'm going along. Those are all things that happen while I'm reading. I'm making pictures in my head while I'm reading. They can't be separated or done after reading. Now I can predict, I pause, I predict what may come, and then I start reading and double check my predictions. So, you know, there's maybe a little tiny gray line right there, but.
Can you give an example of more of a skill that we commonly might see?
Yes, one that is very common in core reading programs is author's purpose. I actually have to read the whole text to determine that. In a lot of cases, I may not be able to determine the author's purpose. Theme is another one.
It makes for amazing discussion after text. Those things are important, but they're not a strategy to use as a tool to understand the text while you're reading. I personally cannot determine the theme until I have completely read and understood that entire text. Then I have to sit there and really ponder, what was that theme? And I think about a lot of things to determine that.
So it's definitely a post-reading skill.
Same thing with maybe compare contrast.
Mhm.
Read it first, maybe afterwards. Maybe you need to go in and compare contrast to do some writing with it.
Sure.
Things like that.
Unless we're actually talking compare contrast as a
Text structure.
Yes,
and then it could be a strategy.
Yeah.
But a narrative text compare
Yeah.
contrast, that's a skill we can do afterwards if there's a
Yeah.
purpose for it.
Because I'm comparing and contrasting character traits
Yeah.
of two different characters or actions that they were doing, or those can be done after.
Yeah.
And I use my summary to do that with, right?
So if you have that graphic organizer,
Yeah.
sweet. They've
Then
already got the tool to do it.
Already ready to
And they
compare
can go back in
contrast.
text as well. But.
Yeah, absolutely. So even finding details and evidence, those are not strategies. I don't really think I've ever seen a research-based list of strategies that includes details on it.
So first, they need to use a strategy to comprehend the text.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I can go back in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if that's something you're expected to do, there's your tip. If your students are struggling doing it, maybe you need to start with a strategy first, and then you can do something like key details.
So we've written some lessons where a first read we've summarized, and then a second read we go back in and we find text evidence or key details to support whatever it was we were having them find. So a second read we go back in and find those things, because a first read you're really not paying attention to those things. You're getting more of what we call the gist, the big nugget. And then as you have a discussion, as you go back in and reread and double check, that's when you can really find that evidence or those details. But as far as a first read,
yeah. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit of strategy versus skills.
No two lists are ever the same either.
No. So the strategies you see we refer to, Angie has fine-tooth combed what strategies. So, but not to say the skills aren't important, but strategy is what we focus on during the reading instruction.
Yeah. And not to say that after reading is not important either, because a lot of what we do within our core, the things that teachers have to teach students to do in the core standards, are after reading items.
So what do we do to get there? Strategies.
We have to do the during reading, and then they'll be able to do those after reading standards, meet those standards. But we can't forget the during reading is different. It's going to be something different. So we don't find key details to understand text. We do comprehension strategies and discussion and graphic organizers and to understand, and then we'll be totally able to go back in and find those key details, which will meet the standard for our core.
That's a great tip.
So,
share it with all your teacher friends.
So just, a little tip there. Wasn't planning on talking about that.
It went that way, didn't it?
All right. So wrapping it all up, comprehension, it's the purpose for everything else we do. I remember saying once that this, it's hard. It's hard to understand this. And my mentor said, it's pretty much like rocket science. So if you feel like it's difficult and you're hearing different things from lots of different people, that's kind of how it is. It's pretty messy, and every kid is different, and every class is different, and every text is different, and you know your students. So you make good choices for them. Read the texts, match what your instruction is to your text and to your students, and make good choices.
I love that.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. Hopefully this helps.
I hope so.
Okay. Well, thanks for watching this video. We hope you learned something today. Share it with your teaching family. We're here to help each other. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Thank you. Simply Teach.